Welcome to the Tech in Shanghai podcast, the Pearl of the Orient. Shanghai is the city of the future. All systems go, full steam ahead. It never stops. Technology, innovation, ambition. It's everywhere. Join us as we explore this new world and talk to the people making it happen. The Tech in Shanghai podcast. The future is now.
So, everybody, welcome back to the Tech in Shanghai podcast. We've had a bit of a break for summer, so if we get off a little bit shaky, my apologies, but we've got a great guest in the studio today, so it should be really easy for us. I'm John Vallis, your host, and our guest today is Jennifer Xu, and she is the founder and CEO of a company referred to as Green Apple. So, Jennifer, thank you very much for coming on the show. Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful day in Shanghai. We don't get too many of those these days. It's been a rainy and cold summer, so sorry to have you in the studio. Great, thank you. Before we get going, we've had a lot of guests on this show. A lot are primarily foreigners that are here, entrepreneurs doing startup businesses. You know the story. And what's so interesting about having you on as a guest today, and hopefully we can get into it, is that you were actually born and raised in Shanghai. Is that right?
Yes, I'm Shanghainese.
Right. Mm-hmm. So I'm always so excited to get that perspective because, like I said, we interview a lot of foreigners, and of course their stories and experiences are very interesting. But for someone like you who has started in China rather than abroad, went abroad and come back, I think it's the perspective will be really interesting. So before we get going into about Green Apple, perhaps you could give us a little bit of background about your story.
Yeah, sure. Happy to introduce myself. Sure. So basically, I was born and raised here, as John told you guys. I basically studied pharmacy in college, and then I went to consulting, boring career track, and then I went to Boston for my MBA program, and then after that, I realized that I really want to come back to China because that's the market that I'm really familiar with, and also that's the market that I can create a lot of value. And personally, I'm very passionate about healthcare. Because I also, studied pharmacy in my college. I do want to do something to change or help to improve the healthcare system in China. So that's why I come back. I was involved in pharmaceutical industries, medical device industries, and I have a lot of friends who are physicians, surgeons in China. Yeah. And then, what I'm working on is healthcare to really improve the quality of healthcare.
Right. Yeah. So you humbly glazed over one element of your education, and you said you did your MBA in Boston, but yes. I believe it was Harvard, was it not?
Yeah, Harvard Business School.
So decent school, not bad, right?
Yeah, not too bad.
To do your MBA. So after you worked for a little while in the U.S., right?
Just for a summer, actually. Yeah, so I was doing my internship in Indianapolis, which I believe a lot of Americans haven't even been to.
Sure.
Yeah, it's fun to spend the summer over there, met a lot of people and also understand, how the U.S. healthcare system works, actually. Yeah, it's very helpful.
And, a lot of native Chinese that go to the States for education, oftentimes they'll stay a bit longer to get work experience or because they like the lifestyle or they like the environment, whatever. What made you, come back so quickly?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. I actually struggled a little bit in school. So after my MBA program, I had several offers. One offers, two offers is for me to stay in the States to work in the healthcare industry. And then, but I really, reflect a lot on myself. And, the moment of truth came during my trip to India. So my professor basically brought a group of HBS people there. And basically we studied the medical tourism industry there, and then I was
sorry to interrupt. HBS, Harvard Business School.
Yes, yeah. Sorry for.
It's okay.
Yeah. So basically, our group studied the medical tourism. So we got to basically visit a lot of top hospitals in India, and in India, the healthcare system basically there is 75% are private hospitals, and it's really top quality, great physicians, surgeons, from overseas. So I was amazed. People say that India is 10 years back behind China, but I think in terms of healthcare, it's actually pretty advanced.
Really?
So I was like, wow, I should do something because China is really, behind.
Yeah.
In China, the more than 90% of hospitals are still government owned, and so the service is not really, a top consideration for the government or for the hospitals. Yeah, so there is a lot to do. So it's like I need to come back to really understand the sector. Right. So, one offer I got offered me to become a medical sales rep, basically to sell medication to doctors, introduce the product to doctors. Sure. So I figured, this is the frontline experience that I need to really understand the system. So that's why I decided to come back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the interest in working in healthcare, I mean, obviously you did pharmacy and then you pursued it at Harvard. Was it always something you wanted to be involved in? You didn't want to be a doctor, but you wanted to be involved in healthcare in some way? Or how did that whole motivation come about?
Yeah, I actually always joking with my doctor friends that like one thing the only thing that I regret in my life is I didn't become a doctor. But then I really love what I'm doing now. Right. So actually being an entrepreneur or want to be an entrepreneur is always something that in my mind. So I used to be a entrepreneur. Now I'm a real entrepreneur. Right. I'm really glad I did it. And I think, my good friends basically knows that I'm really entrepreneurial and I really want to, take action and make things happen or fix things. Yeah. So that's something that I want to do.
Right.
Yeah.
In the healthcare field, that's what the motivation was.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And also that's also where my background is.
Right.
Yeah. And also that's the sector that, need a lot of help.
Right.
That I can create most value to.
Yeah. Well, I asked because, of course, listening to this show, we have a lot of entrepreneurs. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I mean, a lot of people are still getting their education or their experience or whatever it is that they're doing, but they have that like kind of fire inside. They're like, man, I really like to do X in whatever industry. So it's always interesting to hear from people like yourself that not too long ago did make that decision and made that leap and kind of see what the motivation was and what you really needed. And actually, before we move on from that moment, you mentioned you went to India and you saw, the discrepancy between the medical system there and in China, and that's what brought you back to China. This entrepreneurial fire, I think, like you said, was probably burning for a while. When you came back to China, you didn't jump into entrepreneurship immediately, did you?
No, not yet, actually. So basically, I joined Groupon, a company, it's like a very popular a while ago. So I was running part of the operation there to really learn how to do operation for internet company. And then I become a sales rep, found a sales rep to understand the ground rules for healthcare. Yeah. And then I joined a medical device company, basically to understand the mentality of surgeons. So I was basically preparing myself along the way. Yeah, I won't be prepared actually right out of MBA program.
Right.
Yeah, and then, at that time, I do not really have a specific idea, that's something that I want to do. Right. Yeah, it actually takes some time to cook the idea for me to, really personally believe in it and then go for it.
So was this a planned approach for you? Like, you came out of school and you saw the way things were in the world and in China specifically, and you had an inkling, you had not a solid idea yet, but you knew what direction you wanted to go, but you thought, I need to build my knowledge base. I need to build my experience. So I'm going to join different companies within the field that I'm interested in and get my. Was that like planned?
Yeah, it's kind of planned. I think so. During my MBA program, the 2 years that I was in Boston, I got familiar with the digital health space in US, and I got very excited about it because I thought leveraging the existing mature TMT technology to help transform the healthcare industry is something really amazing. So it's already happening. It was already happening in the U.S. when I was there, right. 09 to 11. Yeah, so I started to explore opportunities for China.
Yeah, the whole digital health and mobile health industry is so amazing. I mean, I think it's definitely one of those industries that's super ripe right now for disruptive changes because, first of all, it's one that has a lot of problems with it, whether it's exclusivity, it's prohibitively expensive, it's, there's not enough of the right services, there's too many people, all these different things. And it feels like an industry that technology is just now beginning to kind of innovate. So we're seeing all, whether it's Apple's new health platform that we'll see how that turns out and companies like yours that are getting involved that I feel like in 10 years, the medical and healthcare space, like the way that we all receive healthcare will be totally different.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, actually, for the investment world, it's super hot in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
So there is an organization in Silicon Valley called Rock Health, which is started by one of my classmates at
really?
HBS.
Yeah, I've heard of Rock Health.
So
Cool.
she is the founder, and then basically they have all they are tracking all the digital health data or deals going on in US.
Yeah.
So this year, the investment amount goes up to 160%, which is like crazy.
Yeah.
And in China, actually, in the last several weeks, mobile health, digital health has been on the headline of major, media.
Right.
Yeah. So last week, Tencent, the biggest internet company, invested about $70 million in a company who is doing online doctor community.
Right.
Yeah. And a while ago, probably like last month, a VC venture capital firm invested $50 million in a company who is doing like doctor-patient community. Yeah,
Right.
so we're kind of in that category, but it's super hot now.
Yeah, but there's so many different ways that things can be changed with the healthcare system. So it seems like there's room for a lot of different companies to bring their services to bear, and especially in China. And I'm sure you know this more than anybody, but with 1.3 billion people, and over the last 20 years, lifestyles and diet changing dramatically. Not always for the better in terms of diet. Healthcare in China is going to be, in a very short period of time, probably one of the biggest industries in the world, or the biggest healthcare industry in the world, because there's just so many people and there's going to be so many issues, and figuring out how to organize, structure, and service those people is going to be a very big task.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, in China, people basically are betting on two things. One is healthcare, one is education.
Right.
So people are like super willing to pay for these two things. Yeah. So I'm in one of the, super hot area, I guess.
For sure.
Yeah, and I really wanted to create value.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about what you're doing in this area. So Green Apple. Why don't you tell us a little bit about it, what it does, who you do it for, and then give us a little bit of the status of the company.
Yeah, sure. Okay, great. So basically, our product is very simple. Our product is two apps. One app is for doctor to use, and the other app is for patients. So basically, when patient and doctor are using the app, they can get connected directly and talk to each other. So patient can send messages to doctors, or a patient can schedule a phone call with a doctor to ask questions and do consultation. So basically, what we are doing is really like to find a way to empower doctors and empower patients. So currently, basically, most of the doctors work for public hospitals. So they're like public servant. So their salary is pretty low. And then, they have to work in one hospital to get they have to get a license to practice in one hospital. They are not free. So they don't really have a lot of choice. And they have to follow, the strict rules for that hospital. And for the patient, basically, you can imagine it's China is a massive country and a lot of sick people. So everyone wants to go to the best hospitals. So you basically have to wait in line with other sick people, normally for 2 to 3 hours. And the doctor only give you like 2-3 minutes and then, give you a pretty bad attitude and write you a prescription, right?
It's wild. I got to comment on that because I've experienced, having lived in China, I've experienced that. And the last time I was in the doctor's office, like you said, there was hundreds of other people there and we had to wait. And I finally got in and I was chatting with the doctor for, like you said, less than 2 or 3 minutes. And somebody just opened the door and was like, is it my turn
no
yet?
privacy.
Is it my turn yet? And the doctor was like, no, not yet. And they closed the door. And a minute later, they opened the door again. Are you ready?
Yeah.
And I'm like, it blew my mind because obviously in the West, that would never happen. I mean, that's just totally different. But here, everyone's just clamoring to get in. And like you said, the doctor doesn't have much time. Sorry to interrupt, but it is a problem here. So it's interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
Something that helps.
Yeah, I'm glad that a foreigner also resonate with this situation.
For sure,
yeah, because this is happening like every day. Yeah. So if you just walk into a hospital and then you will feel like, wow, this is a miserable experience for anyone, right? So that's why we think it's important to have a tool basically for the patient to contact the doctor directly. And if it's not necessary for the patient to go to the hospital, then you can just ask the doctor on your cell phone.
Right.
Unless it's really necessary, then you go to checking the hospital and see the doctor.
Right. Because I found also, I mean, this is true all over the world, but a lot of people go to the hospital for really information rather than emergency, like I need treatment for something right now. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, I have a bit of a headache. I have the time. I'll go to the doctor. And as a result, you get massive queues there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's as you mentioned, like, actually people go to hospitals for very different reasons. I mean, in US, probably people go to hospital only to, treat their disease, right? So for China, those old people probably just go to somewhere have air conditioning, or they just want to have a chat with the doctor. It's like, oh, doctor, I miss you. I wanted to check in, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Oh, and a lot of people, probably half of the patients are just going there for medication refill,
Right.
which doesn't create any value for the hospital. But, the hospitals have to deal with it, and the doctor have to deal with the patients who are only doing refill.
Right.
So there is a lot of inefficiency in the system that we can help.
Right. So Green Apple is basically trying to bring more efficiency to this overworked, overloaded system.
Yeah.
So how do you pair the patients with the different doctors? Do they have to have an initial consultation in person first, and then they go on that basis, or how does
Exactly.
it work?
Yeah. So basically, our positioning is, when the patient wants to find a doctor, basically the patient already went to see the doctor before in the hospital, so the patient kind of know the doctor. And then basically to make sure that when the patient asks a question, this doctor know exactly what the patient is talking about and can help the patient.
Right.
Yeah, it's not just like random walking and it's like, oh, doc, I have a headache, I have a stomach. Then, those top physicians are not interested to answer basic questions.
Right.
Yeah, but currently, for the hospitals, doctors have no control of the inflow of patients. Basically, anyone can talk to them, and it's a waste of their time.
Right. So how, once they've had the initial consultation with the doctor and they leave, is there a transaction anywhere along the line? Like, does the patient pay to ask per question or per month, or how does it work?
Yeah, so currently sending messages is all free for patients. But if the patient wants to talk to the doctor on the phone, basically we charge 99 RMB per 10 minutes. So the patient needs to pay for it to buy the time for the from the doctor.
99 RMB for 10 minutes.
Yeah. That's actually okay. So, for example, if a patient,
I think it's very reasonable.
Yeah, it's very reasonable, right? But but then the how to say, the healthcare bill in China is very low, right? For a local people, like if a Shanghainese want to see a doctor, Shanghainese only need to pay like 14 RMB.
Right.
Yeah, but for someone live outside of Shanghai, including all the travel, expenses or the accommodation, then 99 RMB is very cheap.
For sure.
And also they can have like direct contact with the doctor and ask questions. Because if they go to the hospital, there is a chance that the doctor is not in hospital today, is not on duty, so that the patient needs to see another doctor and explain everything all over again.
Yeah. And how does this impact how the doctors spend their time? Is it something they do outside of their typical working hours, or do they take an hour in between each hour, or have you noticed how it's been changing the schedules of doctors?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we actually check the back-end data, and then we see the user pattern for the doctor have two peaks, right? One peak is basically before they start work, so 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. or probably 8 a.m., so like early morning. And then the second peak is after work. Probably like 5-6 p.m. And then the small peak is before sleep. So basically, we see like doctors are talking and replying patients all the time when they have time.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and how long has this been operational for, Green Apple?
Well, I started a company 1 year ago, last August, and then we started to operate the app this March.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
So relatively recently.
Relatively recently, but very fast progress.
Really? Good. So can I ask how many users you have? I guess combined, doctors and
about several 100,000 now.
Really?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's going well. I mean, this is the sector is really hot.
Sure. Well, before we started recording this show, we were talking about how technology is integrated in China, and it's something we've talked about on the show a million times, but it always bears repeating because it's so fascinating. And I think in China, it's almost like people skip the stage where they had cell phones and laptops and all that kind of stuff, and they went directly to mobile smart devices. And as a result, the way that they integrate different services that come on those platforms is different. It's more seamless. In the West, I feel, and of course there's exceptions everywhere. In San Francisco, it's better than Arkansas or whatever. But in general, these new services are offered, and it seems to take a lot more slugging and time to get people to trust the service, to engage in the service, to be consistent with the service. But in China, whether it's an app like Green Apple or it's banking done by WeChat or Alibaba, it's like it's launched, and if the product is good, of course, it always has to be. But if it, overnight or over several months, just like is happening with you, there could be hundreds of thousands, millions, tens of millions, or even hundreds of millions of people using them.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is what's so compelling about what's going on here.
Yeah, as you mentioned, actually, it's amazing that, one of our competitor, or we consider as a competitor, they're very PC focused. So their product is a website. But then, they spent the last 10 years building up a user base. So basically, we spent only several months and then did what they did for 5 years. So, the power of mobile or the power of social network is really like super powerful here.
Yeah. That kind of stings for them. But yeah, it is. And I mean, because I think everyone is more and more, you probably know the stats more than me, but it's something like 60-40 or 50-50 depending on the demographic. But I think it's very clear to everybody that it's moving entirely towards mobile. And as the mobile devices become more sophisticated and the user interaction becomes better, I think the reasons for using a PC or something like that they're diminishing.
Yeah, exactly. And some people say for some Chinese people, especially people in a rural area, the first device that they can browse a website is their cell phone.
Right.
It's not the laptop or not a desktop.
Well, there's a big price differential there as well. So, their phone services a number of different needs, whereas buying a laptop is relatively low on the scale. So the Green Apple sounds like a great service. I love it, when I was doing some research for the show, I love it when services are super, and this is not a negative thing, I love it when they're super simple, The concept is easy to grasp, the need is easy to identify and it's there, and the way to interact with it is very clear. So what are you doing? You're having a personal one-to-one relationship with your doctor via a mobile device, speaking or via text. That's it. And I think that's a powerful service because, like you said, a lot of times it might take a trip to a certain hospital and there's costs there, a lot of time involved. Whereas if you could use a service like Green Apples, then it's almost like your doctor is one of your other friends. You're going to be on WeChat. You're going to be sending messages anyways. So if you happen to have something that you need that's medically related, you can have that direct line to a professional.
Exactly.
Which is a very powerful proposition.
In China, physicians it's almost impossible for doctors to give their personal cell phone number to patients because there's so many of them. So they actually really appreciate the existence of the app so that they can actually have a tool for them to manage their patients and communicate with the patients.
And in China, obviously, there's still a huge legacy of traditional Chinese medicine. And Western medicine is becoming more popular and it's being taught in the schools. And certainly there's international clinics, all over the place now. But TCM is still widely available. Is your app geared towards primarily one or the other, or does it not distinguish and is beneficial to both? Yeah,
there's no difference at all. I mean, we're solving the problem. We're solving the communication problem. So either this is a Chinese medicine doctor or it's like a surgeon or whatever. They still need to talk to their patients and the patients needs to contact them.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
So it's the exact same need.
Right. Yeah. So you launched in March. Now you've got several 100,000 users. You just told me some exciting news that happened last month.
Yes.
Can you share it with our listeners?
Sure, yeah, happy to. So we actually basically just closed our Series A funding, which is a major milestone for us. And also, basically, we successfully convinced the market that we are doing something valuable and we have the capability to execute an idea. Yeah. So now we're in a crazy expansion period now.
Right. You mentioned you had to hire. How many people last week?
Well, last week we have 6 new people on board, and next week probably another 10. So it's gonna be
like
on
double
like
your
this,
staff, right?
Yeah, this for a while.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll have to have you back on the show in a few months, and you can tell me how you actually integrated all those things, because I think a lot of entrepreneurs, they get their idea, they get their initial team going, they get some funding, and they're trying to push through their service and get their users and work out their business model. And I think that's where most of the discussion is in podcasts like this and when you're meeting with people. But I don't hear as many discussions about, oh, shit, I've become successful or things are going in the right direction.
Yeah.
And now I have to manage success, and that's a big, there are books written about it, and a lot of people do talk about it, but I'm intrigued by it. So once you have some experience with that, I'd love to have you back on, and we can go through it.
Yeah, actually, when I look back to my career track, I kind of did the reverse, right? So I started from strategy consulting, and then I did, corporate business development, and then I did, so basically, my experience at Groupon. So that's like the time that Groupon was doing crazy expansion in China. So I know exactly what to do, like to help a company, to grow like significantly.
Right.
Yeah. So I kind of know that in my mind. So that's what I'm doing now. Yeah. So for my startup, for Green Apple, basically this is like something that I built from scratch. Like I have no idea what it is, and then we built it slowly. We tested the idea, we tested, the demand from the users, and then we finally launched it, and then we basically just see the feedback from our users, and now here we are. Yeah, we're ready to expand.
About a year later, right?
Yeah, about a year.
That's incredible. I mean, that's quite quickly for startups in general. You know, to have your Series A closed and to be on that hiring track within a year of starting the business, that's pretty rapid.
Yeah, we wish we could be faster, though. I mean, internet
Spoken
is
like a
crazy.
true entrepreneur is always the case.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a great story. And like I said, you'll have to come back on when you have even more experience with your own company, bringing those people on and integrating them, because the talent hunt in China, from what I understand from people I've spoken to, is getting more and more challenging.
Definitely.
To get the right people and then to integrate them and then to keep them, because we know how transient people in the Chinese job market can be, especially if they have a specialized set of skills.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, hiring has been a challenge so far. I wish I could bring like 60 people last week on board, but I only managed to get 6 of them. Yeah. Yeah, it's really like I need more people to basically help to expand the business.
Right. So I want to, now that we have an understanding of Green Apple and how things are, moving ahead super fast, I want to get a little bit into the personal side of things, if you don't mind.
Sure.
But, a lot of people listening to this program, and a lot of people that are budding entrepreneurs, like you said earlier, they're entrepreneurs, maybe they're thinking about it. And even those that are already entrepreneurs, I think they would look to your story and aspire to have something similar. You seem to take it step by step, and you learned what you need to learn, and now you're implementing that. Mm-hmm. How, in a city like Shanghai, and in an industry like the startup and healthcare industry, where the competition is not only there's a lot of competition, but it's very rapid. Things change so quickly. Tomorrow another app could be launched, and all the users could migrate there. How do you maintain balance in that scenario?
Yeah, well, I think it all goes back to what I want to do with my life. I think that's really what Harvard Business School told me, and it's a transformational experience. I think, I spent 2 years in Boston, and then I really had a deep self-reflection, what I wanted to do with my life. So my life has to have a purpose. Right. And the purpose now I'm working on, or the cause that I'm working on now, is to really, using the startup opportunity to empower doctors and empower patients in China. Mm-hmm. So, once I start to believe, or once I really believe in this, what's going on in the market or competition is just something pretty superficial. Right. I mean, people come and go. That's very normal. I mean, for the same for the group buying thing, right? When I joined Groupon in China, there is 6,000 competitors in the market, and most of them basically just want to make quick money. Yeah, it doesn't, they are not really thinking about anything like creating value, what they want to do, what, longer term. Yeah. So, I mean, for us, what really stick the whole team together is, they do know that what we're up for, what we're doing.
Right.
We're not just doing an app. The app, today is an app, tomorrow it can be something different.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, the product is just a form of like how we deliver the value to the society.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is, like you said, this was kind of, you came to this conclusion through a lot of self-reflection and time thinking about it. And this is what I guess guides you to keep on a positive mindset and keep pushing forward on the rainy, cold, days when everything seems to be going wrong. Mm-hmm. How do you communicate that to staff? Because I think in all startups, you're not in a position yet to pay huge salaries and all the different things that some of the larger companies can offer. So I think a lot of startups, they try to place an emphasis and sometimes have challenges with getting staff to kind of embody the same principles, philosophies, and motivations for the work that they're doing. So for the staff that you have and for all the staff that you're going to have soon, is there anything in particular you do to kind of bring them fully on board with your with the mission and with the philosophy behind what you're doing?
Yeah, I think basically it's like every little details, right? Starting from like interviewing, recruiting, basically making sure that they know what we're doing. Basically, I interviewed all the staff for now. Like every staff, I basically talk to them and decide they are hired or not, right? And then there is a lot of decisions to be made every day. For example, when we discuss product, basically I just ask the product team, like, guys, let's step back and to basically think what we're really about, right? So if we're creating new features for the doctors, I basically ask them, can this feature deliver the value to empower doctors? So basically, like, bring them back every time they are doing something in execution. Yeah, and then, over time, they basically realize, they can actually make judgment on their own because that's something that I really care about.
Right.
Yeah, I don't care about like what exactly the product feature looks like, but if this feature actually delivers the value or help the doctor to be empowered, then we will go for it.
Right.
Yeah, so it's like every little detail counts.
And that's a perfect segue to another question and thing that I grapple with constantly. I think a lot of people do in various forms and intensities, certainly in the entrepreneurial space. And I think, like you were just beginning to say, it has a lot to do with the conviction and the clarity of your mission, of what you're trying to accomplish, change, what your ultimate service is. But uncertainty is a thing that I think in such a fast-moving landscape can cripple some people because, you worry that you'll zig when you should have zagged, or you went down that road when you should have went down that road. And with limited resources, you don't have that many opportunities to make too many mistakes, especially, if they're costing a lot of time, money, resources, whatever. So do you have any way that you keep the compass in the right direction and, kind of put the blinders on so uncertainty doesn't cripple you or the organization? Yeah, so basically I think there are two things, right? So the vision or the mission will never change. Otherwise, there is no base for the company to exist, right? Yeah. There is no company. So this will never change. And then, for the uncertainty, it's really the market, the user demand or something. So basically what I can make sure is every decision, for the user is made based on the user feedback. Right. So we're highly analytical. We look at a lot of data and then basically let the data tell us. We don't just make a decision up in the air. It's like doctor should want this. Doctor should want it doesn't make sense. Yeah. So every decision we actually the management team all look at the data. It's like, okay, we launched this feature. How many doctors use it? How are they using it? Right. Why they're not active? Why they're not going using the way that we want them to use, right? And then I basically bring my CTO to interview doctors, interview patients all the time, right? Because user feedback is critical for us to really we can make sure that we create something that they want, not we want, because what we want doesn't matter. So as they say, keep the focus on the problem and then get all the feedback you can constantly. Exactly. Yeah. It just reminded me of something I meant to ask. Do you find it's harder to get doctors on the platform than the patients? Because, of course, the patients are the ones that want to communicate with the doctors, and doctors maybe have less incentive to do so. So is it a bigger part of the sales process or a bigger part of the feedback to try to, how do you tailor this to get more and more doctors online?
Yeah, exactly. So our model is more kind of like a B2B to C, right? So doctor is the small business side and C is the consumer side. So for the patients, we're not really worrying about it. We thought like, for social marketing or marketing campaign, we'll get a lot of patients. So that's fine. So actually, I allocate most of my resource to attract doctors. So my whole sales force is basically recruiting doctors every day.
Right.
Yeah. So that's kind of how I organize the business.
And are they doing that primarily in Shanghai, or is this going all over China at the moment?
Yeah, so currently we are only in Shanghai, and we are only targeting at the top hospitals and top physicians. And then, in the next month or two, we're expanding nationally. Wow. That's why I'm hiring crazy.
So many people.
Yeah.
That's a daunting thing looming on the horizon, I'm sure. Yeah. Exciting, though.
It's very exciting.
So, again, I want to bring it back to the personal level. So so many people, entrepreneurs, or whether you're just, you're not an entrepreneur and you're working in a company, everyone's trying, or most people are trying to, push forward, make themselves better, advance their career, whatever it might be. I think as a startup entrepreneur, it's even more magnified, because, again, like we've been saying, things move so quickly, there's so much competition. Do you have any rituals, routines, anything like that in your personal life that you make sure you do to ensure that you show up to work, with the right mindset or with the right energy level? Like, is there anything that you can share with other people listening out there? It's like, this helps me succeed.
Well, I mean, for me, because I'm so passionate about what I'm doing, I'm the founder, right? So I'm like the core of the culture.
So that founder fuel. You don't need any, no, not even any food. You're just on that.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about that. But personally, I do a lot of yoga, and I think that's on the yoga mat. That's something that I basically bring to myself, and that's like sometimes that I belong to myself, right? And then I can do a lot of self-reflection while I'm trying really hard physically. So that's kind of like a break that from the busy work.
Sure.
Yeah.
I find yoga is like a meditation in motion. So it's not as hard to clear your mind because you're focusing on where your hands and feet are and getting into the stretch. But I could certainly see it from a perspective of someone like you whose mind is constantly grappling with, this has to be done, and giving you a chance to kind of level out.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, for me, I really love, to basically empower my staff. So basically my goal to every of my direct reports is, your goal is to do this better than me. That's your goal. Right. It's like, okay, I can take your responsibility, but you are the one who can really figure it out because I'm not the best person to do it. You are. Right. So you tell me what to do. Yeah. So basically, they're really
humble approach to empowering your employees. And
but that's the only way that I can basically build something big because individually I just have very limited influence, right? So I have
to empower.
Rely
only on your genius and skills.
Yeah, exactly.
Along the same lines, how do you balance your work life with the social life that I'm sure you have in some form? I mean, do you ever have to consciously manage that, or is it more, it's easier for you to balance both?
For me, it's pretty natural, actually. Yeah. Before I work for big companies. I hang out with people a lot in the entrepreneur community and also healthcare community. Yeah, so I feel like it's pretty natural for me. Right. I don't need to make time I have to do this social, I have to do that social. I think it's all coming together.
Cool. Yeah. I think that a lot of the how you perceive the difference there is, again, like you said, how passionate you are about what you're doing. Because if you're at an event that is loosely related to what you're doing, you could probably see it as social and professional and not really have to distinguish between one or the other. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, for today, this podcast, I don't know if it's working or social. Yeah, if people
are
not,
glad you say that.
Yeah, because if people are not interested in the company, I can share more about my experience and basically to help to inspire people, to basically empower them to pick what they really wanted to do with their life. Yeah. Or if people are very interested in my business, then I tell more about my business. Yeah. So it's all together.
Fantastic segue into the last couple of questions. So, speaking of empowering people and giving them some advice, just a couple more questions. One is, are there any books, podcasts or anything that you can recommend that you found inspirational, that were impactful, that were useful for you, that you can recommend to people listening?
Well, I really like TED, TED.
Sure.
Yeah, I listen to a lot of talks, on the TED. So I think, basically based on people's interest or preference, you can pick. But I mean, for me, those like sharing from successful people, entrepreneurs, or, those inspiring videos, or even those like pretty silly, like modern or whatever things, I think are very inspiring for me.
Sure.
Yeah, because that's not part of my life. It's very different. Yeah, so I really love that. I actually just did a talk in SEEPS, which is a top MBA program in China. And one thing that I share with them is basically a lesson taught by one of my professors at Harvard Business School. Basically, he said, you have the luxury to quit if you are no longer passionate about what you are doing. Mm-hmm. And this has been inspiring me, ever since, actually. Yeah, so I always check on myself, like, is this what I want to do with my life? Yeah. It is, then I have to, be pursuing it further. If not, then I need to quit and, do something I want.
Right.
Yeah, so I figure like the audience are really inspired by that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think unless you have a really strong motivation and passion for what you're doing, that question is increasingly hard to answer. Because you're like, am I doing it for the money? I haven't been making that money, or the status, or because startups are sexy. But I think when you're coming at from the perspective like you are, where it's something that you're just so passionate about, that question probably doesn't come up too often.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, but when I was working for big companies, or when I, did not know what exactly I would be working on, I have to think.
Comes up a lot more.
Comes up exactly.
Sure. Yeah. I think we've all experienced that to some degree.
Yeah.
Advice to your 20-year-old self. Would you change anything, where you are now? Obviously, things are looking pretty good, but would you do anything different? If you had a phone call, you could call your 20-year-old self and be like, hey, Jennifer, do this or don't do this. Is there anything you'd say?
Well, I would prefer to start my company much earlier.
Right.
Yeah, probably in my 20s. Yeah, or, right after college. Or I even wanted to, I would love to see myself start a company in college.
Sure.
Yeah, but I thought, I just got exposed to, so much opportunity when I was in America. Mm-hmm. Because I thought, wow, people are doing so cool, crazy things and cool things during college. But in China, basically, the education system is pretty boring and rigid. Mm. So you have to remember a lot of things and, pass tests. So I don't think the college education in China is that inspiring for people. And most people are still looking for a high-paid job. That's kind of like the end goal for college education. Yeah. So I wish I got, inspired much earlier,
Sure.
or I wish I could have a, helpful mentor.
So what would you say to yourself if you were 20? If you had a phone call to you 20? Would you say, don't go for the stable job? Find someone to be a founder, or just get started? Because I know it's a paradox, because you obviously, who knows where you would have landed had you changed your course and done something differently.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe I'll call myself and say, Jennifer, go travel around the world, and you will see the big world, and then, maybe your life will be different.
Right. Okay. I like that. And the final question I ask everybody here, as we've been saying, a lot of people listening to the show are entrepreneurs. They're interested in doing it, or maybe they are entrepreneurs. And interesting, as you just said, a lot of times people have that fire in them very young, but a lot of those same people are sometimes met with failure because perhaps they didn't have that worldly professional experience that you got over the years prior to doing your startup. So what would you give as 3 pieces of advice, not to yourself, but to the people listening, to help them on their way, to make their road more easy, shall we say, to inspire them, to help them? Could be technical advice, or it could be, philosophical in nature, whatever you like.
I think I would make it 2, actually. So one is basically really think hard about what you want to do with your life. Mm-hmm. I think that's the question you have. Everyone needs to answer before you actually, spend time on anything. once you know that, then everything becomes tactical. So if basically have analysis on yourself and see like what you're lacking of. If you can, within a short period of time, you can get that skill, go grab it. If you cannot find someone who can do it, and then you can put all the pieces together, and then that basically significantly improve the possibility for you to succeed.
Right.
Yeah, but I think end of the day, it's really something that you want to do is going to inspire or put people together to make it happen.
Right.
Yeah.
And what's the second piece?
That's the second.
Yeah.
Piece. So first is know what you want to do.
Know what you want to do.
Second is basically you need to make sure that all the tactics or all the skills are putting together as a complete piece.
So you kind of plan things out properly.
Yeah, exactly.
Give me a third one. I know you got it in you.
Wow.
Third piece of advice. It could be anything.
Yeah,
Get your vitamins, do yoga, whatever.
No, like have fun along the way. Definitely. Yeah, sure. I think people can tell like you are struggling or you're having fun.
Right.
If you're having fun, actually, people will be basically people will think that's very charming, and they think, oh, you're doing something.
They want to work with you.
Exactly. Yeah, you will naturally you will attract a lot of people.
I think that's a great point, and it's very important. I'm glad I pushed you for the third one.
Yeah.
So Jennifer, that's the end of the show. Thank you very much for coming on and discussing all these things with us today.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Where can people check out Green Apple or get a hold of you if that's something you want to put out there? Twitter, WeChat, Facebook, anything. Where can people learn more about what you're doing? Yeah,
but, so it's China. Let me think. The best way probably is email. So my email is Jennifer, JENNIFER @kangkanghui.com. So Kangkanghui is KANGHUI.com. Yeah.
And
so welcome to shoot me a line.
Are you guys hiring Chinese workers exclusively, or are there any?
No, we're very open.
business?
I mean, my designer is American citizen.
Right.
Yeah, she doesn't really speak Mandarin, so it's all fine. Yeah, we're pretty international actually.
All right. So anybody out there who's loved the conversation today and wants to work with an inspired person like Jennifer, maybe reach out to her. She's going to go on a hiring binge over the next couple months. So.
Yeah, we're definitely hiring. So please contact me.
Cool. And guys, we are Tech in Shanghai. You can find us on Twitter @TechInShanghai or email us connect@techinshanghai.com. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you all next time. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Tech in Shanghai podcast. If you enjoyed the show, subscribe to us on iTunes and follow us on Twitter @Tech in Shanghai for everything tech from Shanghai and China. See you next time.